Hey guys, welcome back. This is part 2 of chapter 10 from the online OpenStax 2E textbook. My name is Prescott and I'm here at PsychSync, Succinct Psychology, and today we're going to continue from where we left off last time. We left off right here, Masters and Johnson's research. In the last video, if you guys didn't watch it, we went through Maslow's hierarchy of needs, motivation and emotion, motivation when it comes to eating disorders, sexual behavior. So the very last slide we did last time was we talked about Kinsey's research right here, the findings that Dr. Alfred Kinsey found about sex, and now we're going to go into Masters and Johnson's research. So they conducted a study of physiological responses during sexual behavior, observed people engaging in sexual behaviors, and measured physiological variables, example, blood pressure and respiration rate. And they also measured sexual arousal, for example, vaginal lubrication and penile tumescence. Sexual response cycle. Excitement, there's 4 stages. First is excitement, the arousal phase, so erection, lubrication. 2 is plateau, increased swelling and blood flow. 2, labia minora, pre-ejaculatory fluid. Stage 3, you have orgasm, rhythmic contractions, ejaculation. And stage 4, you have resolution, so you return to unaroused state. So here we have right here the sexual response cycle as arousal goes up. So it's time. So you have excitement, it leads up, but then you can see the plateau. Orgasm goes real high up, and then when it's resolved, your sexual arousal goes back down. So sexual orientation is the emotional and erotic attraction toward another individual, a relatively stable characteristic of a person. It's not a choice. Between 3% and 10% of the adult population identifies as homosexual. So what makes someone heterosexual versus homosexual? Previously thought to be caused by different socialization and familial experiences, but research shows that those experiences can be very similar in homosexuals and heterosexuals. Genetic and biological mechanisms, research has found differences in brain structure and function between heterosexuals and homosexuals. Alright, so gender identity is one sense of being male or female. In most cases, our gender identities correspond to our biological sex, but not always. Gender dysphoria is gender that most people would assume they are. So if you identify as female, but you look like a male. Must persist for at least 6 months and must result in significant distress or dysfunction to meet a diagnosis criteria. Now, transgender hormone therapy, is the use of hormones to make one's body look more like the opposite sex. So, continuing, Chaz Bono, a transgender male, is a well-known person who transitioned from female to male. Here, figure A, in the 1970s, the world knew Chaz as Chastity Bono, the daughter of the most famous entertaining duo, Sonny and Cher. Here, young Chastity is pictured with Sonny. And image B, later in life, Chaz transitioned to align his physical body with his gender identity. Continuing on, here's another example. Actress Laverne Cox, who's openly transgender, is the first transgender actress to portray a transgender character on a regular television series. She is also an advocate for LGBTQ+ issues outside of her career, such as in this Ain't I a Woman speaking tour. So right here you can see her giving a speaking tour. Going on, we have emotion. Always fun. Emotion versus mood. So mood is a prolonged, less intense affective state. It does not occur in response to something we experience and may not be consciously recognized or intentional. Now, emotion is a subjective state of being that we often use to describe our feelings. So if you're feeling mad, sad, happy, it is relatively intense and occurs in response to an experience. So you see a really sad movie, you're going to be emotionally sad. So it is consciously experienced and intentional. Now, components of emotion: physiological arousal, psychological appraisal, and subjective experiences. They are informed by experiences, backgrounds, and cultures. So, figure A, figure B, toddlers can cycle through emotions quickly, being A, extremely happy one moment and extremely sad the next. So, theories of emotion. We have the James Lange theory. Emotions arise from physiological arousal. So you see snake leads to your heart and respiration rate increase. That's physical response, and that causes a feeling of fear. The Cannon-Bard theory says that physiological arousal and emotional experience occur simultaneously yet independently. So they occur at the same time but are independent of each other. Why do I keep doing that? So you see a snake, you get that physiological arousal and you feel fear at the same time, but they're independent of each other. Whereas the James Lange, it's, you see the snake, your physiological arousal, the heart and respiration rate increase leads to your feeling of fear. Can and Bard, they occur at the same time. Now, empirical findings, here we have that individuals with spinal cord injuries, so are incapable of receiving autonomic feedback, could still experience emotion, but in some it was less intense. Now, suppression of facial expression of emotion lowered the intensity of emotions experienced. And these findings suggest that physiological arousal is not necessary to experience emotion, but it does increase the intensity. Continuing on with our theories here, we have the Schachter-Singer two-factor theory. So, it states that emotions are composed of two factors, physiological and cognitive. Now, physiological arousal is interpreted in context, leading to the emotional experience. So you see a snake, you have physiological arousal and cognitive assessment of situation labels arousal as fear, and then you experience the fear. So they believed that physiological arousal is very similar across the different types of emotion, making cognitive assessment important. So palm sweating, heart racing, increased respiration rate, you could be scared or nervous. Now, the Lazarus's cognitive meditational theory is that emotions are determined by our appraisal of the stimulus. Unlike the Schachter-Singer model, the appraisal occurs before you label your emotion. Appraisal is immediate and unconscious. You don't have to consciously label something. So here we have the theory of emotion. Going through it again, nice chart. James Lange, you see the snake, all of these. First step is you see the snake, but next you have the physiological response, which leads to your fear. Can Bard, again, see the snake, and you have the physiological response and emotion at the same time. They're independent of each other. It's not like they're grouped together. As you can see, they're not like, it doesn't say heart pounding, sweating, and fear, but they are occurring simultaneously. Now, the Schachter-Singer two-factor theory, you see the snake, you have the physiological response of your heart pounding, sweating, and then you label it as, you have a cognitive label of that reaction as I'm scared, which means that you have the emotion of fear. And finally, the Lazarus cognitive meditational theory, you see the snake, you appraise it, and then you register that you have fear, your heart's pounding, and you're sweating. So, going on. Now, the biology of emotions. So we have the limbic system. It is involved in mediating emotional response and memory. So you have the hypothalamus, which is involved in activation of the sympathetic nervous system, part of emotional reaction. And then you have the thalamus, the sensory relay center. Neurons project to both the amygdala and higher cortical regions for further processing. Now, the amygdala plays a role in processing emotional information and sending it to cortical structures, and the hippocampus integrates emotional experience with cognition. So here you can see, here's your hypothalamus, your amygdala, and then the hippocampus right behind it. So again, we've talked about amygdala in one of the previous units, like recent ones. I have no idea. The amygdala has been a primary target of research concerning the biological basis for emotions, especially fear and anxiety. The amygdala is composed of various subnuclei, including the basolateral complex and central nucleus. So what is the basolateral complex? It has dense connections with different sensory areas of the brain, and is critical for classical conditioning and attaching emotional value to learning processes and memory. Now, the central nucleus is involved in attention and has connections with the hypothalamus and various brainstem areas to regulate the autonomic nervous system and endocrine system's activities. So it regulates your autonomic nervous system and your endocrine system. And again, endocrine system is involved with the release of hormones, chemicals. All right, so facial expressions and recognition of emotions. So, cultural display rule, culturally specific standards that govern the types and frequencies of displays of emotions that are acceptable. So, individuals from the US express negative emotions like fear, anger, and disgust, both alone and in the presence of others. Now, individuals from Japan only express these emotions while alone. So, despite varying cultural display rules, recognition and production of facial expressions of certain emotions are universal. So, the cultural display rule, in the US, it's a cultural thing for you to express fear, anger, and disgust not just alone, but in presence of others. While in Japan, you're only supposed to express it when you're alone. You're not supposed to be very emotional. Next, we have the 7 universal facial expressions of emotion. So these are universal. It doesn't matter what culture you're part of, what country, you're going to recognize these 7 emotions. So happiness, smiling, surprise, you have sadness, fright, disgust, contempt, and then you have outright anger. No matter what culture you are going to recognize the emotion somebody's feeling if they are scowling at you really angrily, you know? Then we have the facial feedback hypothesis. So, does smiling make you happy, or does being happy make you smile? So, the facial feedback hypothesis states that facial expressions are capable of influencing our emotions. Depressed individuals reported less depression after paralysis of their frowning muscles with Botox injections. So you have emotional stimulus, which leads to your facial expression. That leads to your physiological arousal, and that leads to your emotional experience. Again, physiological arousal would be something like heart rate increase, sweat, which then leads to your emotional experience. So I actually want to know what you guys think of that. Does smiling make you happy? Or is it the fact that you are happy that's making you smile? And, let me know which one you think it is, whether or not you think that your facial expressions are capable of influencing your emotions. Like if you're in a bad mood, do you think that, smiling, like trying to give a big smile for a little bit, do you think that will influence your mood at all? Let me know in the comments if you guys want to. That is the end of chapter 10, Motivation and Emotion. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you found it, interesting and educational and maybe a little entertaining. Please leave a comment if you have any, critiques of the videos, what I can do to make them better for you guys. And yeah, my name is Prescott. One more time, here at Psych Syncs, Sync Psychology, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Thanks. Bye-bye.